Welcome back to another video here on Free Will Photos. Today we are going to be taking a look at a photo maybe for an e-commerce website. In the past, I have photographed items on pure white backdrops, so that way they can be posted to websites like Amazon and whatever else, Etsy, things of that sort, where there needs to be a pure white background. I'm going to show you the process. So if you're doing this for yourself or if you're doing this for a client, then maybe you'll be able to do that. If you want to pick up a copy of ON1 Photo Raw, consider using my coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. It'll save you a little bit of money at checkout, and I make a small commission every time someone uses that code. I greatly appreciate it. And then, of course, if you find value in this video, then smash that like button. And if you're new, hit subscribe. Let's jump into the computer and take a look. So here we are inside of ON1 Photo Raw, and this is just a multi-tool that I photographed, and this is actually my own. I used to have it sitting here on the desk. I was looking for it just now, but it's not here on the desk right now. And this is the type of photo that I would photograph for a client and send to them so they can publish it on a website like Amazon, things of that sort. I could have cleaned this much better, and normally whenever I photograph products for clients, I clean them very, very well. And you can see, there's some scuff marks in here. Now, typically I would edit this inside of Photoshop or Affinity Photo, and that's where I would do this. But I can do a lot of what I do inside of Photoshop or Affinity Photo right here inside of ON1, and that's why I'm making this video. So the first thing that I want to do is really retouch all of these metal spaces so that way it looks pretty good. And what I typically would do here is use the healing brush, and that's what I'm going to try to do here as well. Now, this particular healing brush it copies from one place and puts it somewhere else. That's not the tool that I want to use today. Instead, I think I want to use maybe the retouch brush. We'll try. Let's see. Let's go ahead and increase the feather so that way it blends pretty well. And I'll just paint that over there, and we'll see what ON1 does with that area. It does a pretty decent job, not gonna lie. Could it be better? It does a decent job. I'm just going to quickly paint over some of these areas. I'm not gonna do this for the entire item just because it would take a long time. Like every time I click, ON1 has to think, whereas in Photoshop and Affinity Photo, this happens pretty quick. And, I'll be honest, this type of editing, I don't think ON1 was really designed for as far as like the retouching aspect that I'm doing here. The actual stylizing that you're going to see here in the future, it'll be great. So if you are only using ON1 and what you want to do is clean up your products before you photograph them, so that way you don't have to do this type of work in post-production. But I want to get rid of some of the major issues that I am observing here, so that way the edit kind of comes out looking the way that I would imagine it to, or how I would deliver this if I were to give this to a client and post it to a website. Just bear with me. I'll fast forward through all of these little edits. Okay, so I got rid of some of the stuff. There's still a lot of things that are wrong with this area up here, and I could spend the time to really hone in and fix all of that, but that's not really what I wanted to show in this particular video. Just know that you do have retouching tools available to you, and you can use those to modify your files as necessary. The first thing that I would do, just like I always do, is I'm going to hit Brilliance AI and see what happens with the tone and color here. What I know as a requirement, and this is where you have to understand the requirement of the platforms you're posting to. The backdrops need to be pure white in order for Amazon to actually accept them. So that means I need to get 255 all the way in the background here. I don't know if this Brilliance AI is going to help me get there. So instead, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and turn that off, and I am going to manually update this, or modify this, I should say. So what I'm going to do is crank up on the exposure, and I'm going to come over, not there, click on levels, And you can see I have 236, 236, and 236, and I need this to be all. So what I'm going to try to do here is increase the exposure until I get 255, 255, and 255. Now, one of the ways that you can really figure out if you're at that 255 mark is I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and I'm going to hold down the J key. And wherever you see these red overlays, that means that I have purely blown out the background or completely blown out the background. I'm going to go ahead and pull up until I get that red look all over the background, and then I can let it go. So now I know I have a pure white background. My tool doesn't look true to life. So 1.5 is the exposure update that I need to make, and you've probably already guessed it by now. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this into local adjustments. But what I want to do is increase my midtones just a touch globally and pull down on my blacks. This is going to help me with that contrast and make this look a little bit more, and I don't know what the word is, but it's going to look more appealing on images on the website. So then I'll click on local. We'll click add adjustment. Clicking on my icon here, we'll see if the masking tools the AI masking tools will select the background, which it actually does a pretty good job. So I'm going to go with that and select background, and we'll just go ahead and hit paint in, and I'm going to let this go. It's going to darken everything, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint this all in. So that way we select everything. Now I want to keep that shadow, so I'm going to be fairly careful just painting across here because I want to keep the shadow that was there. Now I'm going to use the perfect brush here by hitting Command and R. So Command R gives me the perfect brush, and I'm just going to paint in between these open gaps here. Okay. And as you can see, if I go over it a little bit, I'm not overly concerned because as much as I hate to say it, and all the product photographers will probably cringe when I say this, most product shots, unless it's for a commercial, like you're going to put it on a billboard or it's going to be published in a magazine, but most product shots that are going into e-commerce websites like Amazon, they're not the greatest shots. So this photo that I am editing will stand up quite well against the other images, that are on Amazon. The idea there is to make the photo or the product stand out well enough so that way the potential purchaser is satisfied that it represents the item that they're browsing well, and that they'll be able to purchase that. Okay, so that's really all we're trying to accomplish here. And when you have that in mind, sometimes you'll have a client. I've had a client that got a little bit more picky about what she wanted, and that's when you're doing a job for money, you just got to go with it and be like, okay, you know what, I got to deliver for my client, because if you want to continue, you got to make sure that you're satisfying your clients. But for just showing the rough outline of how you could do this, I've already selected pretty much everything that I would probably select for this image, and maybe a little bit more, all as well. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and just increase my exposure, holding down that J key until I get the background completely blown out. And in areas where I think that it can really use it more, I'm just going to blow it out like crazy. And I think that looks good. And this would pass quite well on Amazon or any of the other e-commerce websites. Now I can clean this up because I'll hit B, and again, using the blend if in Photoshop would make this, I need to get rid of my perfect brush, would allow me to keep that shadow a little bit easier for whatever reason, or not for whatever reason, for what I'm doing here today. I can go without a shadow and still be okay. The goal here is that I'm getting this background completely blown out to meet the specifications that I need for my client, or for Amazon, or your client in that case. So if you look here, you can see that 255, 255, and 255 is all over And if I hold down J, you already know that it's all blown out. And this works pretty well. Now I can take this a step further and really start to hone in the craftsmanship of this particular object using dodging and burning. And I'm not going to do that because that would make this video go that much longer. However, what I will do is come over to the effects tab, and I do this on items that make sense to do it on, is I add dynamic contrast. This is a very, very popular tool inside of ON1 Photo Raw. Here it is without the dynamic contrast, and here it is with the dynamic contrast. And if I had done a better job at cleaning this before I photographed it, then this would come out pretty good. But I can always hit the surreal and then just kind of back this down. And that's the one that I typically use. I don't like to call it a secret weapon, but it is a secret technique that I use sometimes on products that I send to clients. And they're like, wow, my product really looks like it's popping off of the image. And when it's for web, I'm not overly concerned about exposure like I would be if it was being printed. And I always let my clients know, hey, if you want to print this, I give them printable versions of the same product or the same image, and I label them in folders. So then if they decide to print something, they have something that can print and it won't mess up, like, because if you try to print this, it's not going to come out very good. But this meets the requirements for Amazon, as well as other e-commerce websites like Shopify, I think it is, which they recommend that you have a pure white backdrop for items like this and make them solo. So hopefully you found some value in this particular video because, this was a quick one and I just wanted to share with you how I do product photography and how I would recommend you kind of go about it. This wasn't a very detailed video, but it does show you how you can get that pure white background and then mask in on the product, as well as adding in that dynamic contrast, which is extremely, extremely helpful because, again, all of my files, they come back into ON1 after I send them off to Photoshop or Affinity Photo. And that's why I get the opportunity to apply dynamic contrast, and I apply it to one and then just sync it over the entire catalog, if you will, for that particular product or for that client. Hopefully that makes sense. I'd love to hear your comments about product photography, if you've ever shot product photography for a client or personal, and how that came out. If you got questions, then let me know. You can drop them in the comment section, or you can come over to my website, fill out the contact form, or you can email me, freewillphotos@gmail.com. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.